and my parents didn't, I'm sorry, I missed that. My parents were actually did not go to school. My dad went through to sixth grade, and my mother had gone to high school. But they really, I think, embodied the blue collar American dream that we had available to us when I was growing up. So both of them were able to work in. My mom was a legal secretary and a legal paralegal, and my dad was a butcher. And both of them were very engaged in community work in our primarily Mexican American community that in East Los Angeles. So I grew up in a fairly homogeneous neighborhood, and really didn't know much about college at all. I know my parents were very supportive of college, but we just didn't really understand we didn't have any of the mentorship opportunities that are available today. Certainly we can do more, but we didn't have what it took back then. So I was fortunate enough to apply to local schools. I didn't really even think to look outside of the Los Angeles area, much less across the country. And I wound up going to UCLA, where I went from a small 400 person all-girl Catholic high school to a very large, very diverse campus. And it was quite a bit of culture shock at first, just really adjusting to the demands of a college education. But we did have a little bit of mentorship there available for underrepresented students. So we really clung to that and built our own support structures as students. And I found that was something that I believe followed me throughout my career. We were able to bring like-minded students together to really build programs. I remember writing a few grants. One was a grant to the Associated Students organization to start a Chicano pre-med program, and also to start a mentorship program for high school students. So we did a lot of that, and I believe those programs went on for some time. And then I decided that I wanted to do research. I was always very interested in research and thought that this would be a great idea, but really didn't have an understanding of how to do that. But so I applied to medical school. I applied to PhD programs in molecular biology, and then I applied to a master's in public health as well, because in addition to my interest in research, I really thought that I wanted to do community work, public health if possible. And I thought that my career would somehow engage all of those components, but I wasn't really sure how that would happen. Now, I'll cut to the chase just to say that that's what wound up happening, but the pathway was not as straightforward as many people would think. And so I did decide to go to Stanford School of Medicine. It was a little bit further than Los Angeles for my family's taste, but I think it was my own gradual weaning myself away and having my family not only be comfortable with my higher education, which they were thrilled about, but also not being close to home. I loved being at Stanford. It was a small class, very carefully curated to support underrepresented minority students, especially in the School of Medicine. And I decided to stay on there as a pediatric intern. But really then started to put out feelers and understood that there was an opportunity at Johns Hopkins to become a pediatric resident there. They had an opening. And I decided that I would really take my chances and move across the country. And I have to say, it was probably the best decision I made. It was great to be able to understand different cultures. And I'm not just racial and ethnic and other cultures in that way, but really the zeitgeist of working in an institution like this, where I think we were being challenged in a very different way than we were used to being dealt with at Stanford. It really did build up my ability to deal with standing up for myself, for justifying my decisions to others, because I think that was something that I learned at Hopkins. It was quite rigorous, and people had very strong feelings and beliefs. And I learned that I needed to build my own support groups, but also in clinical and administrative decisions, really stand up for myself and learn how to do that there. I stayed on as a fellow in infectious diseases, primarily because I was interested in global health and in public health. And I really thought that along with being a pediatrician, working in infectious diseases was low-hanging fruit in terms of prevention, and really trying to attack some of the very simple causes of morbidity and mortality, not only in the US, but around the world. And then I found out, again, this is something that I think we all know now. Almost all of us know what CDC is, and many people know what the Epidemic Intelligence Service is, but I had no clue what this was. But there was a pipeline from Hopkins to CDC. There were a lot of people who trained at CDC and then came back to Hopkins. And I had a number of mentors at Hopkins who really suggested that I go that route. And I did. And I have to say, it were, again, 2 amazing years where I really was able to learn boots on the ground epidemiology and public health at the same time. Now, I was able to get stationed in California. I wanted to do infectious disease epidemiology and public health in a state rather than at CDC, because I had already done a fellowship. And when you're at EIS, you really have to focus on one disease if you're at CDC. And I wanted to become more of a generalist in public health. So I went to California and dealt with infectious disease outbreaks all around the state, helped set up HIV seroprevalence programs. It was quite an exciting opportunity, and got to make a lot of contacts. And then finally, when I was done there, I was offered a position at CDC, but really wanted to stay in California, and was offered a position by my former Stanford medical school mentor on the tenure track. And I was really excited to do that and set up a number of pediatric HIV and other vaccine research programs at Stanford, and then moved into global child health and administration. So if we can go on to the next slide. What I can tell you is that over the course of my career, I went from an assistant professor to getting tenure and then becoming a full professor of pediatrics. And sorry about this slide, I forgot to correct it. We have since changed the Department of Health Research and Policy to the Department of Epidemiology and Population Health. So I have a joint appointment in pediatrics and epidemiology and population health. And it's really been able to exploit my own background in public health, epidemiology, as well as infectious diseases in children. So it's been very exciting to be part of that work. I'm also chief of the Division of Pediatric Infectious Diseases for about 15 years now. I founded the Global Child Health Program at the medical school and the Children's Hospital in 2013. And I am co-director now of the Infection Prevention and Control Program at Children's Hospital at Stanford, and have had a number of training grants in infectious diseases and infectious disease epidemiology, and have applied and hope to see whether we can get a training grant in global health as well, which I'm hoping we'll hear about sometime this year. And then in 2014, I was asked by the dean to take on the role of Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Development and Diversity. So I think one of the things I wanted to point out here is that it really seems very linear here when you look at this, this trajectory. But in fact, when you're going through your career, you're not seeing a straight line ahead of you. You're seeing a lot of different paths constantly. And that was what I said. In fact, every single one of these positions, as well as the ones before this, were really the result of a number of different pathways that I could have taken. And much to my consternation, I don't like making these kinds of decisions. It was very tough to think about, but surrounded myself with mentors and peer mentorship as well, and support groups. And that's really how I made my way through. And I think it also taught me, especially after the dean asked me to take on this role of faculty development and diversity, that we really do need to build these mentorship programs. And I know we have done that over the decades since I was an undergraduate, but we can always do more. So let me go on to the next slide. So let me just say that every school is different. You heard Beatriz describe very well the work that she does. But Stanford is in a very different position. We have obviously we're a larger school. We've been around a longer, and the medical school has several senior associate deans. So our structure is that we have the dean. So we have the university has 7 schools, including, and one of them is the School of Medicine. So we have humanities and sciences, education, law, business, earth sciences. Medicine and engineering. And so we are just one of 7 schools at the university, and each school has a dean. And under our dean is Lloyd Minor, and he's been at Stanford for 10 years now. And under our dean, there is a vice dean who, interestingly enough, was in my class, graduated at the same time I did from Stanford, and her name is Linda Boxer. And as vice dean, she is really kind of the operational arm of the dean's office, and really runs all of the administrative operations of the dean's office overall. And all of the senior associate deans, there's about there's several of us under the dean in the dean's role in the dean's office as senior associate deans, including finance, global health, office development and diversity, graduate medical education, graduate education, et cetera. But all of those senior associate deans are under the vice dean and the dean. And so the way our faculty affairs programs are set up, they are all under the vice dean. She handles, on top of everything else, she has direct oversight for faculty affairs and has a number of associate deans under her. I, on the other hand, and you see on the left, the faculty affairs roles at Stanford include, the biggest one includes really appointments and promotion processes for all of the over 4,000 faculty that we have in the School of Medicine. So it's quite a big job, including tenure track, medical center physician scientists, as well as clinician educators. So that's the appointments and promotion process there. School-wide policy on academic affairs, management of sabbaticals, leaves, FTE changes, resignations, and retirements. A large role, of course, in conflict resolution, and then to some degree, faculty workshops, many of which we do in conjunction with her, with the Office of the Vice Dean. Now, when I put this office together of faculty development, I also, the history of that office really helped me develop what I was going to do. So the office was started in 2007 under the former dean, Phil Pizzo, and he had asked Hannah Valentine to take on that role. She's an interventional cardiologist at Stanford, and she was asked to start that in 2007. And over a 7-year period, she developed the Office of Diversity and Leadership, really doing very similar things, faculty development and diversity. Now, she left in 2014 to be the Chief Diversity Officer at the NIH, and more recently has returned to Stanford and has very senior leadership roles, again, within the School of Medicine. But because of the split between faculty affairs under the Vice Dean and diversity and leadership under Dr. Valentine, I chose to keep the faculty development and diversity roles together in parallel, but I changed the title to faculty development and diversity rather than diversity and leadership, in my view, because I thought that brought them together. And that is that I believe that that as faculty members in academic medical centers, we are all leaders. So we need to learn the skills and and have the faculty development skills and training to be able to exert that leadership in a positive and constructive and innovative way. And that diversity can also fall under faculty development and culture development across the institution. So building up the diversity, not only the diversity of our faculty, but also the culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion within our institution supports not only faculty development, but the development of and well-being of all of our Stanford Medicine Enterprise individuals, including trainees and staff. So a lot of the work we do falls under these general categories and not in a priority order here, but including faculty workshops. So we do quite a bit of skills building and cultural considerations workshops, for example, around creating a powerful presence, understanding your leadership style, learning how to do presentations, learning how to manage teams, conflict resolution, et cetera. So many of these workshops, and those are all, generally those are basically set up as one-offs because our faculty are busy, as all faculty are. And so if they want to learn specific skills, they can just sign up for workshops at a one-time basis rather than enrolling in a whole program. That said, we also have a leadership development programs and faculty fellowships to develop leadership. And these are longer term. One of them is the Stanford Leadership Academy. It's a very small group of people that goes through an 18-month program at a very high level. Then we have a 30-person leadership development program for mid-level faculty. And again, that's a 9-month program with a research project involved, a quality project or research project. And then we have a leadership boot camp that we are now in our 4th year. And this is for very junior faculty to just learn the ropes, learn how to start building leadership skills early in your career for success. And then we also support the nomination and the financial support for AAMC training and leadership programs that they offer as well. We also provide research support for faculty members, not large amounts, but pilot grants for faculty in topical areas when we have access to those. And those actually generate quite a bit of networks among our faculty who receive these. And we also, of course, engage very heavily in faculty recruitment. In fact, while the Faculty Affairs Office is the regulatory arm of faculty recruitment, we are the resource and training arm of faculty recruitment. So we provide all of the resources and toolkits necessary for all of the search committees at the School of Medicine in doing their searches so that they can optimize the search process and provide especially a diversity lens, a diversity, equity, inclusion lens to faculty recruitment. And just so you know, at Stanford, we tend to have somewhere between 30 and 60 faculty searches on any given time. So it's quite a big job. And we've built out a number of liaisons across both the basic science and the clinical departments to support that. So if we can go to the next slide. As I showed you before, we have workshops, research support and partnerships, faculty development, and awards, and leadership development programs, either short-term or longer-term. You can see that we have been able to, for example, work with some of our colleagues to provide COVID-19 and health disparities pilot grants to some of our faculty. We have the Augustus White and Family Faculty Professionalism Award, which we started off about 10 years ago now. And that is Dr. White in the middle there. He was our first African-American medical student to graduate from Stanford School of Medicine, and then a former chair of orthopedic surgery at Harvard, and the first chair, Black chair of the department at Harvard. And this award is named after him and endowed for him. It's a small award, but it does recognize a faculty member who demonstrates professionalism to the highest level. But since we've started this, we now have an award ceremony that we have every year in the springtime, and recognizing not only faculty, but trainees and other mentorship programs. So I think we've built out our recognition, which I think is important in identifying and naming, giving people credit for the work that they have done. We also have a Hispanic Center of Excellence that was started by Dr. Fernando Mendoza and Dr. Ron Garcia over 35 years ago, and it's now headed by Dr. Rena Thomas and Dr. Felipe Perez. And this is quite an extensive program that we've had over years to mentor trainees. And we have partnered with them through my Office of Faculty Development and Diversity because we know that faculty clearly play a strong role in mentorship of our students. And we also, as I mentioned before, have the Office of our Junior Leadership Boot Camp series, which really leads to leadership development, resources, networking, institutional knowledge, sponsorship, and mentorship, which can then help people build their leadership skills over time. So if I can get the next slide, please. So what we have seen is that over time, we have developed a number of liaisons across the Stanford Medicine Enterprise. We work very carefully with the two hospitals, which have two separate boards of trustees. So they are really independent from us, and yet most of our faculty and trainees actually work in those environments. So it's really important to partner there. We also partner with external faculty development resources, and I know Beatriz is quite engaged in these as well, through ELAM, through other AAMC programs. And our goal is really to provide support and continually pivot to meet the increasing needs of our faculty, especially during these times of COVID. For example, we have just recently been reporting out on our COVID-19 and women faculty task force, looking at immediate, short, middle, and long-term action items that we can take to support our women faculty during the COVID, not just our women faculty, all faculty, but in particular our women faculty who may share a disproportionate burden in terms of other non-academic and clinical activities that really may be hampering their career. And there's quite a bit of data to support that now. So we're putting that report together so that we can work with the dean's office and the university to try to support our young faculty. Next slide, please. And then again, this is the site I want Beatriz would, I think, can speak more to this issue, but the general faculty affairs resources are quite extensive at the national level. But I just wanted to mention in closing here that we are really, both of us, really dedicated to helping others along their path to really reaching their potential and to really paying it forward, if you will, to the next generation. It is critical at this point that we need additional faculty, especially around the diversity, equity, inclusion space, to be much more inclusive, make sure that we can reach our trainees and encourage them to consider academic careers, especially as leaders in their academic medical centers. So I think I'll stop there, and I don't know if there's another slide. It may just be the final slide. So thank you so much.
Thank you again, Dr. Tapia and Maldonado, for, I think, a fantastic and very rich this presentation. There are a number of questions that have been submitted in the pre-meeting question, and I'll just pick a couple of those, and I'm inviting also other members of our audience to also type any comments or questions they may have. We have a few minutes left, so I'd like to maybe start with the first question. There was a question, you both talked about programming that will support early career faculty or junior faculty. What are some elements that must be considered or that are considered in your programs to particularly address the needs of LHS early career faculty in the context of these programs to support their promotion and their advancement?
So I guess I could start. So what we have been doing, so Bonnie has a very unique situation because she has diversity included. So that is, something that is a true benefit. But in terms of what we have at our school, we have a very strong relationship with our Office of Diversity and Inclusion and Equity. And so we do the planning of faculty development specific for our Latinx faculty or minority faculty. For example, we have a women's panel for promotion and tenure. We have other types of training specific for underrepresented minorities. We do fireside chats that usually are unique, where we bring individual if there's a concept or a topic that is important, that's kind of bubbling up. We through this collaboration with the office, we provide opportunities for our faculty. We also talk about, salary inequity for underrepresented minorities and how to do that. So those are some examples that at our school we do, but we also rely on talks at the national level. So we get this information from national outlets being the AMA, the American Association of Medical Colleges, and we ensure that our faculty know about these through listservs, through web pages, and even through the mentor-mentee relationship as well. So I think that's just in general what we're trying to do. Granted, there's much more that we need to do.
Yeah, so as Beatriz said, that is part of what we do integrated into my office, which I find has been very rewarding because we can actually pull together the resources, and we are funded to do these things. So I didn't mention that I have 4 associate deans that are under my supervision. So I have one of our deans, associate deans, is really focused. She's a PhD in organizational behavior from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. So really, her content expertise is in how do we structure our programs to meet the needs of various types of populations. And we have very extensive ties with our faculty of color, with our faculty disability representatives, our LGBTQ plus faculty, et cetera. And we really built those into our liaisons, as well as having a diversity cabinet that comes through our office. So we're able to deal with not what our primary focus, of course, is still faculty, but we partner quite extensively with the medical students, PhD students, postdocs, interns, staff, et cetera. And this is really through networking and sharing resources. The other deans are, I have one dean who is the Dean for Diversity and Equity Initiative. So his work is primarily to chair and run our Commission on Justice and Equity across the entire enterprise. So really having one person who is that point person that I can work with is quite helpful. So all of the resources I think that Beatriz mentioned, we try to bring to the attention of our faculty. We also engage directly with department chairs and leadership at the hospital so that they're aware of these. And we ask our liaisons to nominate people that they may be aware of for some of these opportunities.
Thank you very much. We still have a couple of minutes. I don't know if there are any questions from the audience in the room. I know that we're zooming into one of our guests. I don't know if that will be as a signal, or I have another question also that I can move to.
No, yeah, they're just randomly zooming in on me. No, I'm just kidding. So I do have a question here. I'll take off my mask if it's easier to hear. So I guess, again, thank you so much all for sharing your presentation. This is really helpful. My question is less of a question as it is of like a reflection and then an inquiry about your perspectives, each of you. So I am just curious about each of your thoughts around the role and perspectives about potentially the changing topography of the relationships between faculty and students. And so what I mean by that is, so in full transparency, I'm a junior faculty member. So it's been a really interesting experience navigating the faculty space. And one of the things that I've noticed is I've been curious about what the history of faculty affairs, faculty development has sort of been rooted in, because as I've sort of been experiencing it and myself having not been out of school for too long, I feel like there's some shifts around the ways in which pedagogy looks now and the ways in which the learning platform looks. And I think that's influenced so much by COVID, so much by technology, social media. And I think there's even a difference in ways in which the students vocalize themselves and verbalize themselves. I think with more inclusion practices, more spaces, more and more students are verbalizing themselves, absolutely. And I'm just sort of noticing that there's almost this like intergenerational dynamic that's happening and that I've experienced for myself, even when I was a student, when I would pose certain things to certain folks and the ways that faculty members would respond to me. And especially when we're talking about, individuals of color working with different intersectionalities, that's a whole other layer, right? So that was sort of my own observation, being like, I'm being taught to voice myself, but there's something about this that's sort of landing and being received in a different way. And as I'm now navigating these faculty spaces, I'm also seeing somewhat of a similar dynamic too, where faculty members are like, these students are so entitled. Who do they think they are, right? And so I am curious what you all sort of think about the ways in which faculty affairs positions themselves as a role to meet potentially these sort of different needs. Because I'm also an assistant director in the diversity space, but I'm curious how that merges in.
Thank you for your question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we only have a few more seconds to go, so I wanted to make sure that we respected our schedule. And Dr. Maldonado and Tapia, do you want to just say a quick second?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say that that is constantly a generational issue. There's always going to be that difference in generations. I think it happened to us when we were students. The faculty thought we were entitled, and I just think that's part of. I'm a pediatrician, so I look at it as a developmental milestone where there's always going to be that kind of space. But I think we are giving students more opportunities to empower them to voice their opinions. And we also need, and we have the obligation, however, to train the faculty to listen. And we also have to train students and the faculty to be respectful of each other's opinions, especially during these very turbulent times when I feel like grace and courtesy and respect may be a little worn thin because of the pandemic. But I think this is a great area for training as well. Beatriz, I don't know what you think.
No, I think in terms of trying to give you some historical perspective, groups of faculty affairs are fairly new for medicine. I mean, we've only been around like 20 years, and that's not a long time, to be honest. So I guess that could give you a little bit of context in terms of, how we're developing as an entity. You just heard Dr. Maldonado say, hey, I just developed this department as well. So in that sense, I just wanted to let you know that we're finding our space as well in terms of, faculty affairs and faculty development and these new components of intersectionality. You're in a unique situation because you're a junior faculty member and you're trying really hard to kind of learn the space. And it's challenging. That has never been, an easy component, but you're unique where you're the bridge, right? Because you just came, and then you could advocate for, what you would just close the door on, being a resident or being, a medical student near to that. So towards what Bonnie's comments were, I think there's a couple of components that are unique for faculty. I'll give you an example. Faculty development as it pertains to wellness is not a requirement like an LCME requirement or a GME requirement. And so for us in faculty affairs, we do our best, but we're not looked at for that. So that's kind of an example where, for UME, we have to have wellness for the students and we have to have wellness for our residents. Not saying that we don't have for our faculty, but when it's not required, there's this disconnect. And so that's what I want to share. There is this true disconnect of we're trying to model something and we're telling the students, this is what you need, yet for faculty, we don't have that available. And so those are pieces that, are still ongoing conversations at the national level. And you'll hear these, we're always talking about burnout. We're always talking about wellness, but there's no accountability for that yet at the institutional level, but not for, giving us a license to practice or things like that.
Dr. Tapia, again, thank you so much for extending a bit on that answer. We're a bit past our time and we're going to have to vacate our space so that the next conversation for the Deans of Admissions takes place. Thank you very much, Dr. Tapia. Again, I know Dr. Maldonado has to do grand rounds right now at UCSF, so she has to run out. but it's been fun again to have a chance to join with you, to have an opportunity to speak with others. And thank you for sharing the resources. Thanks everybody in the audience for participating and for your engagement.